In a previous video about the iPhone 17, I mentioned a small observation, which is that the iPhone has been slowly balding year after year.
Remove the bandana.
And you're not gonna laugh.
I'm not gonna laugh.
Alright, okay. Bro, it's not even that big.
If you are someone with a good observation, you probably noticed that the forehead of your favorite phone brand, which used to be big, black, and cool, is now straight, empty, and wide. That's not just an Apple or a Samsung problem, but the whole industry is suddenly turning into a KSI. So what's the story behind it, and how did we get here? That's what you're gonna see in this video. So let's start. In 2007, the original iPhone was released, and marked the start of the smartphone era. Year after year, more smartphones started coming out, and they all had one thing in common: thick and black bezels with huge borders above and below. These designs were not just a choice, but more of a formula. These foreheads housed very important hardware, like the earpiece speaker for sound, the proximity sensors that detects when your phone is near your ear, ambient light sensors for auto brightness, and later, the front-facing camera with the iPhone 4. Companies back then had mainly three goals: make the phone work, make the phone durable, and easier to manufacture. Nearly every smartphone shared the same structure, a rectangular display framed by visible borders on all sides. But by the early 2011, smartphone designs began to change. Display and hardware components became better, and most importantly, smaller. Companies started competing aggressively, and the goal was two things: more screen, less borders. But the major change came as usual from Apple, with the launch of the iPhone 10 in 2017. This was the first smartphone to have such a design. A cutout on top that was called later the notch. No physical home button, and nearly an edge-to-edge display.
But hey, wasn't Samsung the first to have it?
Samsung was actually the first to remove the physical home button earlier that year, with the Galaxy S8 Plus. The notch became one of the most debated moves in Apple's history. While you might find it cool and futuristic, many people were annoyed and hated it so much because it was very disruptive on the screen, and many apps weren't even optimized to deal with it.
Apps just are not optimized for the iPhone X screen yet, but it can get really annoying when you go from app to app and each one has its own little thing that's off or not right because of the iPhone X screen. The Instagram logo should definitely not be so close it's actually touching the notch.
Aside from the previous components, the notch this time had also to fit the new infrared camera, which was necessary to power the new iPhone feature, the Face ID. But despite the controversy, the notch was very successful, and here Android manufacturers had three ways to go through: follow Apple's way as usual and adopt similar wide notch, or reduce the visual disruption and either go with a U-shaped or a V-shaped design. The first group did implement the wide rectangular notch, but the problem is that most of them didn't have the Face ID technology, so the notch here was useless and more of a decoration than a useful addition. The big majority, however, choose the second and third option. The U design that's shaped as a water drop was the common thing on mid and upper range smartphones back in 2018. It was smaller, cleaner, and required only one front camera. The V-shape, on the other hand, was cheaper and easier to manufacture. But by the early 2019, a new trend of design started popping, and is of course the pop-up camera. In this design, the front camera remained hidden inside the phone's body, and physically popped up only when needed or activated. If you're not using it, it stays hidden inside. This was literally the best gift for privacy-obsessed people. Your camera only opens if you needed to. If it opens alone, then it's probably the government. The OnePlus 7 Pro was the best phone to implement this technology. However, its limitations were more than its advantages. The repeated sliding was causing a mechanical wear over time. Water and dust resistance were impossible to add in these models. Some brands even went to the extreme and tried to make the entire phone body slides to reveal the front camera. Some of them even had manual sliders, but as usual, good things never last. The higher manufacturing cost and design complexity were the main reasons for this trend to decline, and even regular consumers preferred simple and durable design, and by 2020, most major manufacturers shifted away. Instead of removing the whole camera from the view, companies chose to permanently integrate it into the display, using a small cutout in the middle or the side, or as commonly known, the punch hole camera. This design became slowly the standard across most Android smartphones, and still till today. Punch hole designs came in two different forms: single hole or pill-shaped cutout. The pill cutout design quickly declined over time, and the single-centered hole became the dominant. But for iPhone, however, Apple thought differently. Hey, Are you enjoying the video so far? If yes, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to support me more, you can join the channel. There are many perks waiting for you there. If not, no worries. Just you watching me is already a huge honor. In 2022, Apple introduced the iPhone 14. The base model was a copy-paste of the previous 13, but the Pro this time came with a completely new design, aka the Epstein, the Dynamic Island. The Dynamic Island was a peak example of creativity, and to simplify it for you, think of it like a normal pill cutout, but Apple built around it and merged it with the system. The animations were nearly perfect, and although many Android phones tried to copy and do the same, but no one even came closer to Apple's way.
The Settings app, the Dynamic Island, split notifications, lock screen customization, quick settings, camera app layout, AirDrop straight from an Oppo to an iPhone.
Since Apple has control over the software and hardware, which allowed the integration to be seamless and with most apps, while Android doesn't have that central control. Eventually, some Android manufacturers had even a better idea. Instead of the expensive moving sliders or annoying notches, why not just hide the camera under the front display itself?
So there's no pop-up, no notch, no hole punch, nothing. An underscreen, an in-display selfie camera at $450 US.
But how are you gonna take pictures?
Well, it's quite simple. The part where the camera is centered will be modified, allowing the light to pass through a transparent glass. Samsung eventually adopted this technology, but only for its foldable models, because the trade-off was in the image quality. Samsung couldn't afford to add this feature to the Galaxy S models, because it would immediately lose to Apple's iPhone in camera comparison. Foldable phones don't have that big competition, and the front camera is less frequently used in these models. The best non-foldable examples I can think of that use this technology are the ZTE Axon series and Xiaomi Mix 5. ZTE was actually the first to introduce an under-display camera in 2020, and since it was their first attempt, plenty of issues started popping up, from the patchy area in the screen to the glowy camera.
However, that's the weakness of this front-facing camera, as it is looking behind and has to look around those pixels, and to me, it often, and most of the time, looks a little bit fuzzy, a little bit washed out as a result of this.
5 years later, Red Magic and Nubia offer some of the best full display designs available in the market. While their selfies still not matching traditional regular cameras, these phones rely heavily on AI to make the selfie look clean and professional, while providing an interrupted experience for users while using the phone. There are already some rumors that Apple might release a foldable iPhone sometime next year, and if that happens, we could see a completely different design. I don't think Apple is that dumb to bring back the notch, nor copy Samsung's whole style. Only time will tell, but until then, this is probably the baldest smartphones can get. Let me know which level you are, and if you're curious to see how I rated each iPhone or Samsung, you can watch them from here. Subscribe and like, and thanks for watching.